Alright, guys. We're gonna go ahead and get into this live stream. Just kind of trying to set everything up. But today we are going to be talking, having another discussion about the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, or the former Islamic Republic. Yesterday, if you've been living under a rock, the U.S. installed government of Afghanistan fell very quickly, very decisively to the Taliban. The Taliban, in which the same government that we toppled back in 2001, December 2001, whenever we decisively defeated them at the Battle of Tora Bora. And 20 years later, they're back, and we had an address earlier from President Joe Biden. I'm gonna go ahead and switch this over. That way you can see me. But yeah, we had an address earlier from President Joe Biden, and it does suck. It sucks. I've been watching the news since yesterday, since this whole thing started. I've been paying attention to the news basically since the whole thing. Ever since basically for like a week, like ever since like the Taliban have been like doing this whole offensive, I've basically been paying attention, and I never really, in the back of my mind, I always knew that the Afghans were not going to do that, because it felt way too similar to whenever the Iraqis had the same issue whenever we withdrew back in 2011, except it took it about maybe 4 years before ISIS basically came back, took advantage of the instability, and basically almost took Baghdad. We would have had the same thing back in like 2014, whenever ISIS was literally on the gates of Baghdad, and a decisive military intervention happened in which the United States, NATO, a lot of other countries came in and beat back the ISIS. And unfortunately, the same thing did not happen here, in which President Biden, as he said in his address earlier, he didn't want to send another generation of Americans to die. He didn't want to pass this on to another administration. We've already been through 4 administrations, including himself, in which we have sent tons of men and women over there to die. And he didn't want that to happen on his watch. And the address was okay. I understand what he was saying. I hope you do a podcast on today. I'm not busy sometime. Well, I don't. This is not your schedule. No, I'm just kidding. But basically, it does suck. I myself had a couple of discussions yesterday with people who were basically calling me a neocon because of what I was saying about Afghanistan. And I don't want to send more men and women to die, because if we really wanted to go in there, we would have to send another 200,000-300,000 troops to put down the Taliban. And I actually agree with what Biden said, that, we're not going to send our own men and women to die in a war that the Afghans don't want to fight. So it's a complicated take, Wait, really? That was it? Okay. It's a really complicated thing to discuss, because I'm not pro-war. I don't want to go to war. I don't want to send thousands and thousands of men and women to die in Afghanistan. But then it's sad, and I'm pretty sure I've had this discussion before. I lost someone in Iraq, and yesterday hurt a lot. It hurt a lot because it felt like a massive slap to the face to Gold Star families. It felt like, why did my family member go there to die? And the family member that I had went for many other reasons. So he didn't die for nothing. And a lot of people that that went over there and didn't come back home, like, they went there for many other reasons. But just it does feel like a massive slap to the face. And I'm not going to blame Biden for it, you know? It's not Biden's fault, of course. But it just was not, it wasn't easy. And yesterday was extremely emotional whenever I was watching it, because it's like, it just felt like, you know, we've spent all this money, all of this time, all of this, you know, we've been there for 80-90% of my life. That's all I ever knew. Like, the moment I was able to start paying attention, we were at war. And we've always been at war. So, going on, PG looks like Justin Trudeau. Speaking of, Canada just ordered a snap election. But, going on, someone said something. Mr. Shiki Monkey, by the way, what's going on? Seen you in a while. You know, Afghanistan, we're not going to send, you know, thousands of men over there to die. And if the Afghani military doesn't want to fight, then it's not our fight either. You know, one of the biggest reasons why Vietnam was such a big deal. I'm sorry, I have to keep adjusting my mic. I just got this new crane for my microphone, if you can actually see. One of those really cool ones that kind of like helps it hang over. It's actually really nice. One of the biggest things about Vietnam was that we went... God, I always get these calls. We went to Vietnam because we wanted to contain communism. And one of the biggest reasons we stayed was mainly because, you know, we didn't want to declare defeat. You know, America's never been defeated before that point. But the thing about that is that, you know, our withdrawal from Vietnam it wasn't as organized. You know, that's why a lot of people have been comparing this to Saigon, is because Saigon was basically, you know, we made this agreement with the North Vietnamese, the communists, and we basically said, okay, leave South Vietnam alone and we won't attack you. And the reason that the North Vietnamese invaded South Vietnam is because, you know, it was actually supposed to be some sort of reunification process during the Paris Peace Accords. And the reason the North Vietnamese were like, okay, you know, we're going to completely violate this agreement is because of Nixon. Nixon did what he did at Watergate, and the rest is history, and the North Vietnamese took advantage of the U.S. instability and secured the South. And so that's why the fall of Saigon was such a pivotal moment, is because Saigon, you know, no one really expected it, and we still had people there. We didn't want our people to be taken hostage, and we also had a lot of people that fought for us in South Vietnam that wanted to get away. And this ended up leading to the famous picture in which people, civilians mostly, were on top of the US Embassy trying to get on one helicopter. Do you think Biden deserves the blame? And yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to get into, is I'm not going to blame Biden, because Biden this is not Biden's fault. And I for one, actually think that I feel like the speech that he made a lot of sense. And I'm gonna pick at Biden after this, because I do have a lot of bones to pick with his withdrawal, because the withdrawal was embarrassing. It was a failure. There was a lot of things that Biden did wrong, but I'll talk about what he did right first. What he did right is, during his speech, he basically said, I don't want to send more troops to die. No one wants to send more troops to die in Afghanistan. I don't want to send it, because if we really wanted to put that rebellion down, if we really wanted to put the Taliban down, we would have had to send like a quarter of our military again. And that's what we did. Back in like 2011, we had like 150,000 troops in Afghanistan alone. But then, Biden completely botched the withdrawal. There was a couple of news stories that I saw. In which the US military just effectively didn't do anything. They just kind of like just left, like overnight. It was just like we just packed our bags and just hopped on a plane and then just didn't say anything, and it just left. But then at the same time, because there's two different sides to this. Yes, the US withdrawal was very hectic. I really think that we should have left troops there, especially if we're supposed to be protecting our own embassy, our own our own assets. And now, we have billions of dollars worth of military equipment that is now in the hands of the Taliban. The government fell. Yes. The Islamic Republic of Afghanistan is no more. It is now the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. I'm reading chat. Hello, love the topic. It's a very interesting topic. The reason Taliban took over so much territory is because all the soldiers were deserting or surrendering. And that's the other thing about Afghanistan, is that the reason the military, it's not because, they were incompetent. Actually, I mean, compared to a lot of other militaries, you could make the argument that they were pretty incompetent. But one of the reasons that they didn't fight is mainly because they don't want to start another civil war. They don't want. They're tired of fighting. They've been fighting continuously since the Soviet Union invaded them back in '79, and they're just tired. They don't. I may have adjusted my microphone so it sounds different. That's what I just did. But I guess the 2022 edition of the game will have Taliban in power then. I'm pretty sure. Biden should have gradually pulled out troops like Trump wanted to do, but then at the same time, like, he was. And the other thing about that too is that the Doha Agreement, which was negotiated by the Trump administration, was to have troops out by May 1st. We were supposed to have troops out by May 1st, but they extended it to September 11th. And Biden, I don't necessarily, maybe he should have, he probably should have given him more time, but we really shouldn't have left without having a considerable force there in order to protect our assets. Because one of the biggest reasons why he may have, rushed troops over there is mainly because they don't want another Benghazi situation. They don't want civilian population that are supportive of the Taliban raiding the embassy and then saying, then we have, a 1979 hostage crisis situation on our hands. And the biggest thing about it too, the geopolitical aspect of it, is that what does this say to our allies? What does this say to Taiwan? What does this say to NATO? What does this say to a lot of our smaller allies that have issues with countries that are way bigger than them, like Ukraine and Russia, like Taiwan and China, um, like the Baltic states in NATO against Russia. What does this say to them if that's going to be our response? And I'll be pretty surprised if the Chinese don't take Taiwan within the next couple of years, because this is going to be an extremely valuable time for a lot of our adversaries to start seizing things that they want, like China with Taiwan and Russia with Eastern Ukraine, or Russia with the Baltics, because the United States they don't want to do anything right now. They don't want to go to war. And I really don't want to go to war either. I'm not a hawk. I'm not a neocon. I'm not someone who thinks that we should go into these forever wars. And people keep saying forever wars as if it's like, you know, it does feel like a forever war in Afghanistan. And I don't want to be in a forever war. But at the same time, whenever you are the most powerful military in the world, you have a solemn duty, and especially if we're about freedom, if we're about helping others, and it's a hard choice, because a lot of people say, like, you know, America first, but they're completely isolationist. And that's one of the biggest picks that I have about being on the right, about being a Trump supporter, about being a Republican, being right-wing, being a populist. I'm not an isolationist. I'm not an interventionist either. I'm not an isolationist. I'm not an interventionist. But I believe that it sounds interventionist whenever I say this out loud, but I believe that America does have a solemn duty in order to help others and protect democracy throughout the world. China and Russia are forming a pact with the new Afghanistan government in Pakistan. Where is that from? The other thing about this too is that we have so many allies that helped us, translators, people that fought for the US military. There's a lot of people that served in Afghanistan. There's hundreds of thousands of people that served in Afghanistan. And more than 100,000, not hundreds of thousands, but like more than 100,000. That have a lot of friends and allies that live in Afghanistan right now. And what's going to happen to them? They gave their lives assisting the United States, and what's going to happen to them? Are they just going to be left to rot in Afghanistan? America should not be a police force. Why should we spend trillions of dollars for allies who don't pay their fair share, who use us to not spend our own money, focus on America and any others? That's the other thing, is that's way more of an isolationist point of view. Because you're just saying, like, focus on ourselves and then look to the others. Well, how long do we have to focus on ourselves before, you know, we can say, okay, yeah, now it's time to look outside of the box? Because especially right now, if we were to just kind of finally just say, okay, we're stepping back. Oh, God, I'm having a cramp. If we were to say right now, after everything that just happened in Afghanistan yesterday, if we were to say, okay, we're stepping away. This is it. We're not the police force. We're not intervening. We're not assisting our allies. We're going to leave NATO. We're going to leave the United Nations, as useless as I think they are. We're going to leave the WHO. We're going to leave this and that. That would leave a power vacuum stronger than there has ever been since the fall of the Roman Empire. Because whenever Rome fell, there was a power vacuum that wasn't filled until like 1,000 years later. Even the Byzantine Empire couldn't fill it, even during the Justinian period. So, when you want to leave, who's going to take the ranks? China's going to start leading the world? Russia's going to start leading the world? Like, what do you want? Because then, because we were isolationists back in the 30s. We had our own issues to deal with. We had the largest economic depression in our nation's history to that point. And then, while we were away, we had this little guy over in Europe, failed Austrian painter, and he decided to seize power in the country that we defeated about 20 years earlier. Or about 15 years. Yeah, it was about 15. About 15 years earlier. And I wouldn't say we defeated, but the Allies defeated. Anyway, I think you get my point. And then they took Austria. Then they took the Sudetenland. Then they took Poland. Then they took Belgium. Then they took the Netherlands. Then they took France. Had effective control over Spain. They invaded the Russians. And then, at the same time, we had little Hirohito over in Japan, sent in his troops into China, slaughtered 300,000 people at Nanking, did the same thing throughout the Republic of China, and then we embargoed them because we were like, okay, hey, like, you need to slow down because you're way too out of line right now. You know what happened? They attacked us. Lost 2,500 men in Pearl Harbor, half of those on one ship alone. But what I'm saying is, I get that it's okay that you want to be isolationist, that you want to say we have our own problems to deal with, but you're not thinking about it. You're saying like, oh yeah, okay, so we need to take care of our own problems and then look out outside of the box whenever we're ready. Well, whenever you're ready, by the time that happens, we're already going to be dealing with, we're already dealing with something comparable to Nazi Germany as of right now, which is China. Is he going to play? No, this is not a gameplay stream. This is just a podcast stream. And there's a lot of other people right now. I'm seeing them in chat right now where they're just basically saying, where they're just like saying wherever American soldiers march, there is chaos. And there's not a friendly view to Americans. And that's the other thing about that is, like, we have had 20 years of failed foreign policy where on September 11th, 2001, we were just like, oh, we were attacked, so we're gonna go ahead and invade 2 other countries, and we lost a lot of credibility. I know personally because I lost someone in the war that, honestly shouldn't have been started. And I'm talking about Iraq. Afghanistan, I pretty much supported the war in Afghanistan because we had a reason to be in Afghanistan, because they were harboring terrorists. And Sorry, I'm reading chat. For me, NATO should have attacked the Taliban to help the people. Technically, we did. Ted Cruz says, PG, why support wars? I'm not supporting a war. You see, and that's what's really annoying me about this whole thing, but especially from people from the right now. They're basically calling anyone that is really upset about what happened in Afghanistan yesterday a neocon. I'm not a neocon. I'm not a neocon. I'm not a rhino. Because I look at the situation from a realistic point of view. Like, I don't know how many of you guys have lost someone in the war on terror. As much as I have my things to say about the war on terror, whether it's right or wrong, but and you say, well, I hate wars. Here, Ted Cruz, do you want to have a discussion about this? Like, we've been meaning to have that debate. Because I will have a discussion about this with someone who's just like, well, I hate wars, period. Sometimes war is necessary, but doesn't mean that it's an easy choice. Because you're just basically saying, like, oh, well, I hate wars. But then you're just saying, like, well, anyone that, like, is really pissed off about what happened in Afghanistan is a neocon. I'm not a neocon. I'm not a rhino. I'm not a neocon. I'm not anything. Iraq was under a false pretense. Afghanistan was not under a false pretense. We had a reason to go in Afghanistan. Biden's handling was completely off. I'm not a neocon either, but Biden's handling was completely awful, and now China's going to spread their influence into the Middle East. And that's what gets me about it, is the speech that he made was okay, but the withdrawal could have been so much better. The withdrawal was a disaster. It was a disaster. Because why it just shocks me, because I've been watching videos of it all day today. I watched the speech too, and it hurts because we literally have C-17s taking off from Afghanistan right now that have people falling from them because people are hanging onto the sides of these planes as they are taking off. And the Biden administration did their hardest to say, this is not a Saigon moment. It's a Saigon moment. It is the modern day fall of Saigon. We have helicopters evacuating people off of the rooftops of buildings. Sorry about that. I'm gonna go grab a drink real quick, because I'm starting to lose my breath. But I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Just getting things settled. Okay, so and I was talking about Vietnam, about the fall of Saigon. This is a lot worse than the fall of Saigon. This is a lot more pivotal than the fall of Saigon. Because we have helicopters evacuating people off the rooftops in Kabul. We have C-17s being blocked by literally crowds and crowds and crowds of civilians, thousands of civilians trying to get out of Kabul, out of Afghanistan. There was last night, there was a C-17 that carried 600 people in a C-17. 600 people in one plane. That's like the capacity of a double-decker, like A380 of an Airbus. Why am I on bi-directional? Okay. That may sound a little bit better. I apologize if you heard a difference in the sound right there. But I don't blame Biden for the Taliban taking over Afghanistan, but I blame him for the botched withdrawal from Afghanistan. Because I agree that it was inevitable that the Taliban was going to take over again. That is not on Biden. That is not on Trump. That is not on Obama. That is not on Bush. But it is the failure of every single administration since the war in Afghanistan started. It is the collective failure of the United States as a country to put down the insurgency, to manage the occupation in Afghanistan. And that's one reason why it hurts a lot, because it's like 2,200 people in Afghanistan and 4,000 in Iraq. How many died in Iraq? Operation Iraqi Freedom. The Iraq War. United States lost 4,507 people died in Operation Iraqi Freedom, including my own family member. And that's one reason. Is it just, yesterday I was totally in the doomer mood. It felt like a lot of them died for nothing. But I don't feel like they all died for nothing, because they went for their own reasons, and I know my brother. It was my brother. I know my brother went there for his own reasons. He didn't go there for politics. He didn't go there for anything except to protect the people of Iraq and the children of Iraq, is what he said. How many Brits died in these wars? British sent 45,000. 179 British soldiers died in Iraq in Operation Iraqi Freedom. And again, I am not at all in support of the war in Iraq. I believe that the war in Iraq was made up under false pretenses, and the other thing too about it, what's his name? Secretary of Defense during the Bush administration, the first guy, he went in there, his what was his name? If someone could actually remind me what his name was. What was his name? I'm trying to remember. Donald Rumsfeld. Donald Rumsfeld. Donald Rumsfeld had an interview with Stephen Colbert where he actually made a lot of sense whenever he said this. And this was like the one interview that made me respect him a little bit more, where he basically said, if we knew it for a fact, it wouldn't be intelligence. And that stuck with me for a while, and I'm pretty sure it'll stick with me for a long time. Because, but but that doesn't make the Iraq War still not made up under false pretenses, because we had intelligence that they had weapons of mass destruction, but we didn't have solid concrete proof, even though we had Secretary of State of the United States literally holding up a vial in front of the United Nations and saying, they have it. They have it. They have anthrax. They have weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. And it sucks. So yesterday was just like extremely hard, because it's just like, you know, again, I've been kind of going in circles for this, so I apologize. But I think you guys get my point. If Iraq attacked Saudi Arabia, they would have been one of the richest countries now. The end state was to prop up a government that was the bastard child of the United States. You can't change a way of social and cultural beliefs through war. Fighting against them only fuels their drive. I agree with that. There was no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. It was just a myth to get us into Iraq. So, but then at the same time, you know, we spent all of this money, all of these resources, all of this stuff in Iraq for the Iraqi military, or the Iraqi. Did I say Iraq? I meant Afghanistan. I've been talking about Iraq, and now I'm saying Iraq. In Afghanistan, for them to just toss it aside and say, here. But at the same time, I also understand that, because they've been at war since 1979. They've been at war continuously. Again and again and again and again. They had the war in Afghanistan with the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union invaded because of I believe there was like a overthrow of the government there, and so the Soviets went in to install a new government because they didn't want, you know, a U.S. ally, I guess, on their border, which would have looked pretty bad, I guess, on the Soviet Union. Then the country just fell apart, and then the United States decides, okay, we'll invest all of this money, all of these resources into the Mujahideen, and say, we'll help out to push the Russians out of Afghanistan. That ended up biting us in the ass, because same government that we supported, or the same group that we supported, the Mujahideen, most of their people, it wasn't the group. So this is actually the misconception that a lot of people have on it. We didn't directly help the group that attacked us, but most of the people who are a part of the Mujahideen went to the Taliban and went to Al-Qaeda. The Mujahideen stopped being a force like during the 90s, after the Taliban came into power, and most of them went to the Taliban, and most of them went to Al-Qaeda, which the Mujahideen, Al-Qaeda, and the Taliban are completely different groups. All three of them are not the same, but the people who are a part of those groups are the same. So the people that we did formerly support during the war in Afghanistan, during the Soviet Union, whenever the Soviets were in there, went in, trained a bunch of these troops, trained a lot of these guys. They ended up training They ended up getting funding from a Saudi billionaire. I don't even have to say his name, because I'm probably going to get stream taken down. Had this Saudi Arabian billionaire give him money. Which I'm talking about Al-Qaeda at this point. Saudi billionaire gave him money. And on September 11th, 2001, trained 19 people to crash 4 planes into 4 separate targets in the United States. Killed 3,000 people. So that bit us in the ass. That's why a lot of people don't trust the United States anymore, because they're saying, you made this problem. And I believe even at the time, the United States kind of took responsibility and said, we made a mistake. We made a mistake. We funded these guys, and they attacked us. But ever since then, it's just like the trust for the United States has just gone down. A lot of people don't trust the United States because they don't know what their intentions are, or they don't even know, like, because it's like, you know, we're no longer the shining beacon on a hill. We're no longer the golden city that everyone wants to go to. I mean, most people don't want to go to. So, should the U.S. send more than 220,000 troops? No. Again, I'm not at all in support of going back to Afghanistan when the Afghan military themselves don't want to fight. It's a waste of money, it's a waste of lives, and it's a waste of political capital, it's a waste of resources. We're not going to go into a country that doesn't want to fight for themselves. And even the Biden administration was trying to get the Afghanis and the Afghan military themselves. And that's part of why Ashraf Ghani left, is because his own military didn't support him. His own military, again, is tired of fighting. They didn't want to start a civil war. Naladius makes a good point. The Afghan military was too dependent on us. Then at the same time, they still had the resources. They're not too dependent on us. How are they too dependent on us whenever they have their own weapons, they have their own resources, they have their own ways of maintaining that military? I saw a press conference with the Pentagon today saying, like, we paid their salaries, we paid a lot of things for Afghanistan. I have the news pulled up on one monitor right here, so I'm watching the news. I don't think we need to fight against them because it isn't our war. No longer. It's no longer our war. That's the biggest thing. And I don't feel that way. I don't feel like it's our war. I actually kind of agreed with Biden today that it's not our war. And he said, I'm not going to send another generation of Americans to die in a war that the people in that country don't want to fight. But this leaves open the door that the Taliban will... This leaves open the door that the Taliban will allow terrorist groups to use them as a base of operations. I need to go ahead and step away real quick. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Sorry. I apologize. Just reading chat right now. We didn't actually pay their salaries. The Afghan government took most of that money and embezzled it. Most of them were paid for months. Yeah, that's the other thing, is that the Afghan government was corrupt to all hell. It was a horrible government. And again, that's the biggest thing, is that, you know, the United States nation built Japan and South Korea. And that's the biggest thing, is like, you know, we went into Iraq thinking in terms of, like, you know, what we did back in the 40s when Japan was completely bombed all to hell. Literally, you know, they were not the same. They were like this ancient relic from like the 1700s. And we went in and they called it the Japanese miracle. Because Japan goes from being completely destroyed, suffering 2 nuclear strikes in the south of their country, and then they become the 3rd largest economy in the world. We went into Iraq and Afghanistan expecting the same thing. But we didn't expect that there would be this, like, insurgent fight similar to what happened in Vietnam, because if that's anything, I'll be surprised if the United States in my lifetime can ever fight an insurgency. But third time is a charm, I guess, because if there's any military tactic that the United States cannot win against, it's insurgency. So, and I'm pretty sure the United States can learn. Like, I mean, especially in the modern warfare, in the 21st century, we can learn. And, you know, if we end up getting into another guerrilla war in, you know, Asia, the Middle East, if ever, it's just weird. The guns we sent in Afghan government, $300 million, I believe, is indeed in Taliban hands now. Yeah, and I was actually watching the, what do you call it? Pentagon briefing earlier, and the Pentagon briefing basically was talking about how is there any actions that the United States is going to take to protect its weapons, to get American weapons out of the hands of the Taliban? And the Pentagon really has nothing to say about it right now. There's a video of the Taliban just chilling at the presidential building in Kabul too. Yeah, I've seen that. I've been watching all of this. And that's the other thing too, is that apparently the Taliban is going through like door to door right now, and finding people that assisted the United States for 20 years and probably going to throw them in jail. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to be found as traitors to Afghanistan, and they're going to be thrown in jail or worse. Apparently in small cities outside of Kabul, they're already doing forced marriages to the women. A couple of days ago, there was a CNN reporter that had, you know, just I don't know what it's called. It kind of looks like a scarf. And then today, she had to wear, like, nearly an entire burqa. There's revenge killings, yeah. And again, it's like 2 steps forward, 20 steps back. This is the worst case scenario for Afghanistan in the modern age. Yep. It is the worst case scenario. But the other thing too about it is that in terms of Afghanistan, a lot of people are saying that if there's one thing that the Taliban can do, it's going to be similar to when Iraq fell, whenever Saddam Hussein fell, because if there was one thing that Saddam Hussein could do right, Maximo says that he's going to leave. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and talk for like about 8 more minutes, and I'll go ahead and head out too. Afghan burqas are totally different. Yeah, I know, and that's what I'm trying to say. So if you can tell me, can correct me, because I'm obviously getting it wrong. I need to do more research on it, but there was totally something I was about to say, but I completely forgot. I'm reading chat too, so that's probably why I lost my train of thought. Definitely worst case scenario, especially China recognizing the Taliban already. Niqab, maybe? I think I've heard that before. But it's just sad. And that's why, I'm not going like, because it feels a lot more personal. I'm not trying to do this as a political analysis. I'm not trying to do this. I'm just kind of like, this is just me talking. Because this is personal. It hits a lot more personally than, a lot of people either. Everyone else is just like, I don't like war. We don't need to go to war. And anyone who disagrees with me is a neocon. I'm not really thinking about this in a political point of view. I'm thinking about this as someone who has personally lost someone in those wars. Hope an Afghan spring happens, which Afghans rise up against the Taliban. Don't hope on it. Don't hope on it. Real neocons. I like how random dude on the internet has changed their profile picture like 5 times since the stream started. We have discussion about this with some other people in the future, Gabe, etc. Maybe an isolationist and a neocon. Yeah, I would actually like to have a couple of discussions about this before we kind of like, I guess, move on. I'm probably going to be talking about this for a while, especially on my streams. But yeah, I would totally love to have someone on here who's more isolationist, and have a discussion with them, because it would be interesting to have a discussion with someone, just like it was a Ted Cruz earlier. I would love to have. This is going to be a me and his debate. This is like a year in the making for our debate. Because me and him have been meaning to debate for a while. Oh, that's actually what I was going to say. Taliban. Okay, so the thing about the Taliban, if the one thing that they're going to be doing right is keeping the peace. because the Afghan people are tired of war. They're tired of conflict. They're tired of death. They're tired of airstrikes. They're tired of war. They're tired. They've been going through this for like 2-3 generations now. Children over in Afghanistan have been born into conflict. But that's a part of one of the reasons why the Afghan military didn't do anything. But why they didn't want to fight is because they just don't want to fight. And the Taliban are going to be really, really good about keeping war from happening, about starting another civil war. Apparently, but up in the north of Afghanistan, up in the mountains, a little bit more history before we go. There was this during the Afghan Civil War back in the 90s, there was something called the Northern Alliance, which is the alliance that eventually became the Islamic Republic. They were the Northern Alliance. The government that fell is the former Northern Alliance. Hamid Karzai, the guy who's currently negotiating the transitional government of Afghanistan right now, fought for the Northern Alliance. And the Taliban is doing really good at keeping the peace up in northern Afghanistan right now because they don't want another Northern Alliance to pop up. And that is why right now, Afghanistan, the Taliban now controls more territory than they have ever controlled in their entire existence. Because back in the 90s, on the day of 9/11, the Taliban controlled like 90% of Afghanistan. The one part that they did not control was up in the north. That little corridor that connects to China, that's what the Northern Alliance, that whole region up there, I forgot the name of the region, someone can probably say it in chat. That's the region that the Northern Alliance controlled on the day 9/11 happened. And on October 7th, 1940, yeah, totally. On October 7th, 2001, less than a month after 9/11, was the day Operation Enduring Freedom happened. And the Taliban very, very quickly lost that territory that they controlled. And now, as of right now, the Taliban now controls more territory. They basically control all of Afghanistan. There's like a couple of valleys that they don't control right now that are still in the hands of the government. I'm using a lot of air quotes, ain't I? But they basically have control over the entire country right now. Badakhshan. Badakhshan? I'm skewering that name, so I apologize to any Afghanis watching this, if there are any Afghanis watching this. But Badakhshan. Is that correct? I learned pretty quickly. They'll probably mop up the pockets of resistance in a couple of days or weeks. Exactly. But the Taliban is going to have to rule with an iron fist. And the thing about it, too, is that they're not interested in democracy. They're not interested in... And that's the other thing before I go. People are saying, like, maybe Afghanistan doesn't want Western democracy. It's not about them not wanting democracy. It's just that they don't want to fight. That is the biggest thing. It's not that they don't want democracy. Women there still want rights. Women there don't want to be forced to cover themselves. Women there want to drive themselves. Women there want to be able to walk to the store by themselves. But it's just that people there are tired of fighting. They're tired of wondering whether they're going to wake up the next morning because a drone strike hit them, or like there's gonna be just like this entire riot or battle that's gonna like take place in her town like that very night. Because again, just as I said earlier, there have been 2 entire generations of people that have been born into nothing but war and know nothing but war. It's not that they don't want democracy, it's just that they don't want war anymore, and they don't care who's in power. They don't care if the Taliban is in power, they don't care if the Northern Alliance is in power, they don't care if Ashraf Ghani's in power, as corrupt as his government was. What do you think of the Northern Alliance? Northern Alliance had a lot of issues. Isn't this essentially a religious conflict? It's not exactly a religious conflict. It's a conflict over... No, this is not a religious conflict. This is not between Sunni and Shia. This is not... And it's definitely a political conflict. Like, the government that was in power was a pretty religious government. They were not secular in the least. Akhundzada is nowhere to be seen. I wonder if he's dead and the Taliban is covering this up. For those who don't know, Akhundzada, if I'm saying that correctly, again, I'm skewering these names. Akhundzada is the guy that basically runs the Taliban, that would be the de facto president or supreme leader of Afghanistan as of right now. It's gonna be interesting. That's actually what I'm really interested to see as this develops, and I think I'm gonna be making a couple of videos describing what the Taliban is, what the government is going to look like, because this is definitely a subject I do want to cover on this channel. And this video has already gotten like 300 views, so I'm pretty, I guess, glad that you guys are interested in hearing my takes on this. But once this does develop, I will make a dedicated video describing what the new government of Afghanistan will look like. At this point, the Afghani people just care if they will have food to eat tomorrow, because the horrific state of Afghanistan is after 20 years of war. I'm not blaming them again. That's exactly what I've been saying. I'm really not hoping on another Northern Alliance, because the Northern Alliance was basically like a combination of tribes in the north that really, 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 really did not want the Taliban. They didn't want the Al-Qaeda. They didn't... Because basically, it actually, back in the 90s, it was a religious war. It was a religious war. Because it was a little bit between a lot of different tribes that had a lot of different beliefs. But now, this is strictly a political war. This is not a religious war. It could devolve into a religious war if the Taliban starts instituting a bunch of religious norms and reforms into Afghanistan. It could devolve into a religious war. But as of right now, it is not a religious war. But that could change. That could change. We have been streaming for an hour. I'm gonna go ahead and call it here. I'm gonna go ahead and head out. Guys, if you guys like this, go ahead and leave a like. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. If you guys want to see any more videos on live streams, etc. on Afghanistan, please let me know. I will try to make a dedicated video about this, describing the Taliban government, describing what their goals, I guess, are for the future of Afghanistan, even though they are barely even recognized. But guys, thank you guys so much for listening to me today. Thank you guys so much for being here. I do appreciate you guys. So subscribe to the channel if you are new, and I will see you guys in the next video, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching, and take care.